Hi friends, from last 5 years I'm working in AI space and I have taken multiple of AI interviews. So I thought of creating a video where we can consolidate all of the AI interview questions. I hope this will help you to clear your any generative AI interview. Okay. So, at first, I have categorized how your interview goes. Okay, and these are the 5 pillars where you must have to work upon if you are going for any generative AI developer or generative AI architect position. The first question will start with the use case. Okay, so you have to prepare the use case which you have worked or which you have understood by going through any of the trainings. Second question will come mostly around the fundamentals. So they may ask you the questions related to foundation model, large language models, what are the different types of large language model which you have worked upon. Then there is a very important concept called RAG, Retrieval-Augmented Generation, and they are expecting you must have worked upon in RAG area, agentic AI area. So here it comes embedding and retrievals. So there will be lot of questions which will basically come from your use case. So they will have, and then that is my favorite area, that is the system architecture and scalability. So they may ask you to design, they may give you some different types of use cases and they will ask you how you are going to design. If you are using a particular cloud platform like say AWS or Azure, which services you are going to use it. Okay, and at last they will also test you whether you have really worked upon in those use cases or not, and the best way to test them, uh, to ask the questions, how do you monitor your model, how do you as a machine learning operations, okay, if you get any real time problem, how are you going to handle those scenarios. Okay, so all those questions are machine learning operations and cloud observability. Okay, so these are the 5 pillars which you have to go through at least couple of questions. So, and if you are good with that, most of your interview will be in these topics only. So let me go through one by one each topic, each pillar. So the first is use case. You would have worked in any of the generative AI use case, but here I have categorized most of the generative AI use case in 4 or 5 by broad categories. Okay, and your use case may be fitting into one of these categories. Okay, so the first category comes is a content creativity generation or summarization. Okay, so there could be multiple types of use cases, maybe like I say you are working on marketing content for your company. It may be a design of the poster, it may be design of advertisement, it may be creation of some documents. And if you're a company, you're working for a media or news outlets, creation of the news. So anything related to content creation. Okay, there could be different types of use cases. It could happen content creation, content summarization. Content summarization is also one of the field where you can use generative AI or foundation model very easily. Like in the legal field, you have got a big document and you created an application which will help to summarize the content. Okay, if you are working in the insurance domain, so there will be a lot of policy contracts which will be very difficult for the people to understand, and there you can create your application to summarize that policy contracts, right? So the architecture of this is foundation model, LLM model. There may be some question related to prompt engineering, how you are designing your prompt, and diffusion techniques. That's one use case. Second use case, which is very important use case, and I will say you must have to prepare at least one use case around that. Okay, and that is the enterprise knowledge assistant using RAG. So as you know, usually the foundation model or LLM model, they are trained in a training data, and sometime your training data will be outdated. Okay, so one shortcoming the LLM have, they do not have the information of the latest data. Okay, so if you ask something which happened today, and since your LLM model is not trained on today's data, it may not be able to give you the correct information and the model will hallucinate. Okay, so there it comes the concept called RAG, where you can plug in the external data sources with your large language model. Okay, so external data sources could be any type. Okay, it could be a documents of your enterprise, it could be a web, it could be a SharePoint, it could be a Git code documentation, it could be a API documentation. So basically what you are telling to the large language model, before you give any answer from the internet, you first go through my own documentation, check over there and try to give the answer from there. Okay, so these type of use cases like HR policies chatbot. Okay, every company has got its own HR policies related to leave, related to compensation. Okay, so you may say, okay, I have created a chatbot which will help our employees to know about their vacation balance, leave balance. Okay, and any type of a different types of leave policies. Internal document, like every company will have an intranet, so you can create a use case around where you have created a chatbot which will scrape the data with all of your data which exist in the intranet, and if a employee wants any information related to that, like code policies, okay, or like there are some tool installation guides or your project related information, you can, instead of going through one by one each document, the person can just ask the question in the chatbot and chatbot will connect to that enterprise knowledge and it will give you the response back. That's the another type of use case. So third use case also very important. Okay, and that considers the use of agentic AI. Okay, so many of the use case which you would have worked upon also falls into this category, but I will say if you are good with RAG, if you're good with foundation model, and if you have not worked in agentic AI, it should be okay, means but yes, if you are looking for the AI architect interview, you must have to be very good in agents. Okay, so what are the agents? As you already know, agents will help to automate lot of tasks. Okay, agent can connect or integrate with external APIs, it can connect or integrate with external databases. Okay, and it can also connect with any of the large language models. Okay, so agent can analyze the problem, it can take a decision on that problem. Agent will also help you to orchestrate the whole workflow flow. Okay, so something like a very simple example like customer support automation. Okay, so a customer support may involve multiple things, like when a customer reply the answer, they may have to go through different type of departments to get the answer. Those departments you can integrate by creating multiple agents. Okay, by those agents will uh, call to different APIs, different knowledge stores. Okay, and give the response back. So here the architecture is based on the agent framework. You should know different types of agent framework, the libraries which helps to create the agents. Okay,
VS Code Copilot
concepts
also.
related
And
with
if you have any
memory
questions, please write the
management,
questions in the
concept
comment box
related to
and I will happy
creation
to
of
reply
different
you.
type
Thank
of
you.
tools, and sometime in this orchestration even human input is also involved, how to use the human input. So everything related to agent is a third type of use case, and one other type of use case also is there related to efficiency improvement. Okay, so you can say like you were worked on creation of one system which helps to review the code, which helps to generate the code easily. Okay, something like I say GitHub Copilot. Okay, or it helps you us to document the API, or it helps to create the documentation related to our code, or it helps us to create the CI/CD pipeline, or it helps us to understand the complex SQL query. Okay, or you can write the query in a human readable form and it will convert to the SQL. So different types of use cases also can come under this developer supported efficiency improvement. So the first and foremost thing is you must have to prepare use cases which are falling at least in these four categories, and then they will ask you to how did you develop it. If you have used your cloud platform, what are the different services which you have used to create these use cases. Okay, next comes the fundamentals. Okay, so they also want to know, are you really aware about the fundamentals regarding the LLM? How do they work? Okay, how the LLM models are trained? Okay, what is the underlying mechanism is there? They may not go very deep, but at least the basic architecture you should know. Okay, so as you know, LLM are based on the transformer architecture. Okay, and before LLM it was a deep learning, and in deep learning people were using CNN and RNN. Okay, these are the two neural network deep learning models. Okay, so they may ask you, if they go little bit more detail, how the transformers are better than CNN and RNN. What type of use cases you will use the CNN model? CNN model are called as a convolution neural network, and RNN model are called as a recurrent neural network. Okay, so they CNN models are good in processing of images. It can understand your images very well. Okay, so they will ask the difference between the LLM and traditional machine learning or natural language programming, NLP. Then they may ask some questions related to fine tuning concept, prompt engineering concept. Okay, and why do model hallucinate? So different type of questions related to fundamentals. Okay, so you must understand little bit about transformer architecture, self attention mechanism, and how it is better than CNN or RNN. Okay, I'm not telling you more detail because otherwise this lecture will be very big, but I'm just giving you some pointers which you can focus upon. Okay, the second one, as I told you, after foundation there must be a question, okay, around RAG, retrieval augment generation. Okay, and retrieval augment generation is basically based on the vector databases. Okay, so they will definitely ask you what are the embeddings. Okay, so embeddings are created by chunking of your data. Okay, and that data is stored in a vector database. So and what you do in embedding, you assign a number to each chunk. Okay, and similar chunks are stored closer to each other. Okay, so they will ask how this similarity search works or semantic search work. So normally if you see in SQL, okay, when you search something, so suppose if you want to search an employee with a name, okay, so it will just go to your table and it will search the exact keyword which you given to him. Okay, LLM search, the semantic search or similarity search, it doesn't work like that. Okay, so it not only search that keyword, it will search everything which is similar to that. Okay, and how it can search? It can search because data is stored in the form of a vector. Okay, so you must have to understand the vector databases. Okay, so there are some industry leading vector databases are there. Open Search Service, Pinocon and FICE, they may ask you what sort of a vector database you have used when you have designed your own RAG framework. Okay, here is the um, uh, a diagram. Okay, so here your company documents are there. Those documents are converted into the embedding. So there are the models which can help you to convert the documents to embedding. One of the model is Amazon embedding model. Okay, and then once the document is available in the form of a embedding, you ask the question and this prompt will go to embedding. Okay, and it will get all the context from the embedding, and then it will fetch the relevant information from the LLM and then provide the answer to the user. Okay, and that is the overall architecture of the RAG framework. Okay, now I am coming to the next pillar, and that pillar is system architecture and scalability. That's also very important because you talked about your use case, but how did you implement your use case? Okay, so which services you have used? So mostly in generative AI, people will use any of the cloud platform. Okay, either you use AWS or Google or Azure framework. Okay, so when you say as a AWS platform, so if the user is placing a request will be mostly you try to do using some API. Okay, so you will be connecting to some API gateway, and then how you are securing your API gateway, and then API gateway will be connecting to sometime your compute services like as a Lambda or ECS or EKS, and then it will connect to your Bedrock service. Bedrock service will call to actual Bedrock or AI models, generative AI models, and then you may be using some of the services for the model deployment. Okay, there may be some questions how you can improve the performance of your model, like caching. Okay, very important. Okay, caching of the prompt, response caching. Okay, observability related questions. Okay, how are you logging? So sometime some questions will be related to guardrails, how you can reduce the hallucination. Okay, how you can also optimize your model. Okay, like your model cost is directly proportionate to number of token uses. Okay, so which strategy you have used to so that you can optimize your token. Okay, how you can use the batch method over here. Okay, so and it's a simple question I put it here. How do you design a scalable Gen AI chatbot for 1 million users? Okay, so you have to talk about each and every service, and here they are going to test your cloud knowledge also apart from your generative AI knowledge. Okay, very important pillar. And the last pillar is cloud and machine learning operations. So this pillar is basically how you are hosting your model. Okay, how are you maintaining the different versions of your generative AI model? Okay, there is a concept called as a monitoring drift. Okay, where over the time your model does not provide the correct information. Okay, so that is called as a drift. Okay, how you measure the drift. Okay, and how do you what did you do to overcome the model drift? Okay, sometime your input data which you provide to the model, it changes over time. Okay, so what are the mechanisms? If you put any sort of alert which will measure the drift, and how did you rectify? Okay, then security related questions will be there. So if you are handling with personal information or PHI information, what did you do in your model so that PHI information is not passed to them? Okay, you may have to create some sort of a guardrails over there. Okay, so these are questions are very important and considering the machine learning operations. Okay, and with this part they will understand you have really worked in each and every area. Okay, so remember these 5 pillars which I talked about. Okay, you have to go through each and every one. I have just mentioned the high level of questions, but if you go you may get some more questions, so prepare it. Okay, now I have put some sample questions here. This question, what are the embeddings and why are they critical? When I talked about the embedding pillars, the RAG, I have already touched base over here. So remember, embeddings are like secret codes that turns word, images or anything to the list of numbers. And how many that those words are similar, they will be fitting closer into the number. Like as we say, like let's have a simple word called love, likeness, affection, even if they are different words, but their meaning is same. So in the vector database, they will keep together. Okay, so when you search with the word called affection, it will get the whole chunk of whatever the document is stored in similar search. Okay, then if two items have similar meanings and or features, their vectors are mathematically close with each other. Now, there is one more thing here that is called as a context. Even if two words are same, sometime they may be used in a different context. Okay, let's understand with a simple question. So there is a word called as a bank. Okay, suppose there is a sentence called I was sitting in a river bank. If you, and then another question is I went to the bank and deposited some money over there. Now your LLM model should be intelligent enough where it can understand the context, like river bank context and money bank context are different, so they should not keep both these two words together. Okay, so very important this embedding. Next question, very important question. Okay, and it is asked in every generative AI interview questions. Okay, uh, how to reduce the hallucination. Okay, so hallucination is the property, is a uh, hallucination is, we say, when the model hallucinate is like when sometimes the model doesn't know the correct information, but still it will try to give you some information and that may be incorrect. Okay, but the model will present you the information in such a way where it will be confident and you will also feel it's correct information. So as a generative AI developer, you should try to reduce hallucination as least as possible. So if the model doesn't know anything, you should simply say I do not have any relevant information for that instead of putting any information. Okay, so one of the technique, how do you reduce hallucination? One of the techniques is using the RAG. Okay, I already talked about RAG is like you can add external data sources which can help the model to get the correct answers. Okay, you can also lower the temperature. So in every generative AI model, there is a concept called where you can set the temperature from 0 to 1. So if the temperature is low, the model understands it has to give the factual information, and if the temperature is high or closer to 1, then it understands it has to be more creative in responding the answers. Okay, so here if you, when you send a query, you reduce the temperature, then it will be, your answer will be more factual and less hallucination. Strong system prompts, this particular thing comes with the prompt engineering, how you are framing the prompt when a user asks certain questions. Source grounding. Okay, and output validation. Whenever any response comes, you must have to validate that response also to make sure model is responding properly. Okay, so these are different ways to reduce the hallucination. Very important question. Then another question that's very important: what is the difference between fine tuning and RAG, and when do you choose? Okay, fine tuning is basically you are tuning the response of the LLM model. Fine tuning is more like you want to change the output response, how the output response looks like. Okay, how you want to summarize the response. Okay, so if you want to change anything, the structured output, you will use fine tuning. If you want to change the style of your model, you will use the fine tuning in the model. Okay, but if in the model you want to add some external data source, okay, you want to add some domain knowledge, enterprise knowledge, you are going to use the RAG. Okay, so how do you control cost in generative AI system? Again, it's very important question. Okay, so there are different ways you can control the cost. One of the ways is token limits. Okay, so your AI model, generative AI model cost is proportionate to the token size. If you increase your token size, your cost will be increased. Okay, you can limit the number of token which the model can process. You can also compress your prompt. Okay, so once your prompt message is compressed, automatically the token size will be reduced, which will basically effectively reduce your cost. Caching responses and caching the prompt too. Okay, so if a user is asking the similar questions, instead of getting the response from the generative AI model, you can just cache those responses and send to the user. That will help to get the cost. A smaller model for the simple task. Okay, so there are lot of industry leading models are there. Okay, everywhere you don't want to use the Cloud Sonnet or some model which are very good. Okay, and wherever you think like, okay, these are the simple tasks, and maybe the Amazon Nova model or Amazon Titan model will be able to do that task, so use those models which are quite cheaper. Okay, you can also optimize your chunking when you are doing your creating your vector database. Okay, so these are different ways you can control the cost. Okay, very important, wanted to touch base this subject too, that is the generative AI chatbot architecture. So I have taken here AWS platform, but if you have worked in Azure or Google Cloud, you can use those services. Okay, and it's a very basic architecture, you can play around this that. Okay, but in high level, here it's a user sends the input, and here you have defined it, because if you create a chatbot, it will be a user interface. Okay, you can, here we have created a Python based UI application, which is basically using the Streamlit. Streamlit is a Python library where you can create very simple user interfaces. Okay, you don't need to use Streamlit all the time. You can use the React and Angular or anything. Okay, and this one is deployed under a VPC in the cloud. Okay, and then this one, in what you have done it, you have containerized this Streamlit application under the ECS Fargate service. Okay, so that your Streamlit application can scale if tomorrow 10 million requests comes all of a sudden, because it's a containerized service Fargate, it can create that many instances how many is needed, and whenever there is less load, it will automatically reduce the containers. Okay, then the ECS will be connected to API gateway. What you are doing using the API gateway, the whole model you are externalize using the API gateway here. Okay, so API gateway will call to the Lambda. Lambda is the place where you are writing your actual code, and the Lambda will call to your Bedrock service. Okay, that's the Bedrock service under the AWS account, and it will in the Lambda only you will be writing your prompt, and the prompt will call to your Bedrock service. And here, if you are using a RAG framework, then you have a knowledge base. In the knowledge base, you are storing your vector embeddings in a vector database called Amazon OpenSearch. Okay, and you are using the Titan embedding model to create those embeddings. Okay, and your knowledge, your documents are stored in S3. So basically, S3 documents will be chunked in the form of embedding using the Titan embedding model and stored into the OpenSearch service vector database. Okay, so when you write any prompt in Lambda, first it will go to vector database, get the context of that query, and with that it will go to a generative AI model, like here they have put as a Anthropic Claude 3, but you can use any of the model which you want, and then you will get the response here. Okay, DynamoDB is if you want to do some sort of a caching of your response, you can use the DynamoDB. Okay, that's a NoSQL database. So that's the overall very simple architecture of any of the chatbot application which can be scaled. Okay, so one of the thing is, if you see all those services, these services can be scaled. Okay, your UI application can be scaled using the ECS. Your caching service can be scaled through the DynamoDB, because DynamoDB is a serverless service. Okay, API gateway, again it's a serverless service, so if the load becomes more, the API gateway can handle that load. Bedrock again is a serverless service. Okay, so basically this architecture can be scaled to very high number of users. Okay, the same thing I have explained over here. UI layer, in the UI layer you can use the okay, when you develop your UI layer here, okay, you have to secure your UI. Okay, you have to make sure your endpoint have the caching mechanism. So you can have, for securing you can use the Amazon Cognito, okay, or you can use any sort of a authentication framework if your company allows, like OAuth framework or Microsoft Intra framework, you can use that. Okay, basically, but they will ask you how you are securing your applications. Okay, so you have to talk through something related to that. Okay, either the Cognito or Microsoft Intra framework or any sort of a other security which you are using it. Okay, then the cloud front can be used for the caching mechanism, and it can also be used to retrieve the information very quickly, and then that has to be again secured through the WAF. Okay, AWS WAF is a then API and orchestration, as I told you, you can definitely use the Amazon API gateway, and for writing the code, okay, and connecting to Bedrock service, you can use the Lambda. Lambda is a serverless, or you can also use the Amazon ECS or EKS, that's a container based services. Okay, and for caching the output response or session state or memory, you can use the DynamoDB or you can use the Elastic Cache or Redis. Okay, then for LLM access you are using the Bedrock service. Okay, Bedrock I have already talked more about in the previous slide, so I'm just moving to the next one. Then uh, RAG, for document store, you can use the S3 as I have shown you over here. Your S3 you are keeping for the documents, or if you have any SharePoint, you can integrate with the SharePoint too. And then ingestion pipeline, like how these documents are fed. Okay, so if it is a static documents, it's very good. You can just put once in a time in S3, and embedding model will create the embedding and store in open search service database. But if the documents are keep coming, so you have to create a ingestion pipeline too. For ingestion pipeline, you can use the Glue and Lambda and Kinesis. Maybe Kinesis can be very good too if your documents are coming in the real time, and then you can use for the Glue for the transformation, or Lambda. Okay, and then finally you can store those documents in some sort of a vector database, Amazon Open Search for vector database, or Pinecone also. Next is observability and operations. Here different types of cloud services you can use. CloudWatch, definitely for logging everything. CloudTrail, if you want to do any sort of a auditing, who has access your models. Okay, so you can use the CloudTrails. AWS config, basically to measure the drift into the model. Okay, and then AWS budgets and cost explorer to basically check whether what is the cost, and you can automate your budgets too. And secret manager service you can use for the storing the API keys for the generative AI models, or KMS for the KMS key for the encryption of the data. Scalability, I already talked about that. For scalability, you can use the containerized services like Fargate or ECS or EKS or Lambda. And if they ask you how you can make as a fault tolerant, so definitely you have to deploy your model into the multiple regions and multiple availability zones. Okay, so here in a very high level, I have summarized most of the questions. Okay, but again you have to go through all 5 pillars in more detail and prepare for the questions. All the best. If you have any questions which you think I can answer, please put in the comment, and I will create a new video and will try to add all the answers of all those questions. So thank you and all the best. If you have any doubt don't hesitate to reach out to me in my phone number or in my email. Thank you. Bye.